Time now for today's museum moment. And in studio with us, returning from the Bakersfield Museum of Art, Melissa and John. Nice to have you guys back again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
I'm sure you had a nice holiday.
Oh, yes.
Looking forward to the next bunch of holidays coming up too, right?
Definitely.
All right. So I appreciate everything that the Bakersfield Museum of Art has done with us so far this year. And are we ready to get into today's activity?
Yes, definitely.
All right.
So hello everyone. Thank you so much for having us do the math. So just a little introduction about ourselves. My name is Melisa Bañuelos, and I am the Curatorial Assistant at the Bakersfield Museum of Art. What that means is that I help in selecting, organizing, and installing artwork in our permanent collection and in the traveling exhibitions that we host at the museum.
And I am John Olivo, also curatorial assistant, mainly focused on gallery prep and installation, as well as some writing and overview of like the content that we deal with and handle at the museum here and there, as well as event organization to some degree.
Yeah, and today we're going to be talking about pattern in math and art, featuring one of the pieces from our permanent collection. So what is a pattern, John?
A pattern is often a set of shapes or designs that are being repeated over and over again, and that often do not change. And if they do change, they are like very small details changing as it evolves. Also dealing with lines and numbers as well.
So where do we find patterns? Patterns can be found in nature or be man-made, meaning they can be something that we draw or create ourselves. So just in general, we'll have some examples about nature and man-made, and these are patterns can be seen everywhere around you. For example, my shirt has a pattern of stripes, and I'm sure that just while you're watching TV, you can see some patterns around your home. So we'll have some examples here for you. So here we have bicycles, but as John mentioned, when you start repeating this object, you start to create a pattern on its own. So this is something that could be found in your town or when you travel. Row of chairs, again, can be found in a classroom or really in a restaurant setting or really any building where you are. And we have some stripes. So this isn't a fabric that's twisted, but again, similar to my shirt, there is a repeating pattern of bars, which creates this repetition. And this is a close-up of a metal plate. So again, this can be found in buildings and on the streets.
I don't mean to interrupt you guys, but sometimes we do this in class where we'll take a close-up of something and have the students guess what it is. Right? So you get very close because they're sometimes so used to looking at something at a certain vantage point or a certain viewpoint.
Definitely.
Right.
And then take a close-up look at it and see if they can figure out what it is. Also something to show texture.
Yes.
Definitely.
One of the elements also. So sorry to interrupt you there. But
Oh, no
no
worries.
worries.
Wonderful.
And so often we also find patterns a lot of the times like on animals, nature, like things that are naturally from our world and that are growing and happening around us. And like even like ripples of water or even like canyons could have like repetitive lines or the rings inside of a tree. These are all patterns and things that are just always repeating itself.
Some more examples.
Some more examples. This one's a succulent that has such a beautiful spiral pattern going on. And then again, like I was saying, like the canyons could have many lines, waves, and shapes going through them that create awesome texture, pattern, and design. And of course, zebras being like one of the most iconic animals because of its black and white body patterns. And even then, it's like a I believe like no zebra is truly identical, so it's like they all contain the same patterns, but even then there are variations based on their genetics. And then sand waves, just creating lines and rhythm.
Made by the elements.
Yeah, made by like the wind and like, different things in the desert, like the weather.
So now patterns in math. So we talk about patterns that we see every day in nature or man-made, but now, of course, we see patterns in formulas and in mathematics. So two types of patterns in math are sequence, based on addition or subtraction, and geometric, based on multiplication or division. So, these can get vastly more complicated the more you study math and as you get older, but these are two of the most basic ones. So our first one here with 3, 13, 23, 33, we notice that each number is added by 10 to get the next one. So that is an example of sequence. And then in our second example, we see 1, 10, 1,000. So that's being multiplied by 10 every time. So that is an example of a geometric pattern.
And with this art that we call tessellation, it really derives from like these same ideas of pattern that we were talking about today. What's amazing about tessellations are like they're using so many lines and shapes, and often even creating illusions depending on how you look at them. Like with this example here, it's like if you look at the shapes as like some of them as a whole, it's like they're creating like these geometric illusions that play with our eyes. And with this one's a lot flatter, but it's kind of like looking at one of those things where there's like the gems within the
kaleidoscope.
Like a kaleidoscope, just that kind of feeling. And like change and constant shapes like interacting with each other, like hexagons and different polygons that could like have multiple sides. So it's like with this one, like it can really be a lot of different shapes depending on how you look at them, or like how much detail you really want to observe.
Right, and then you could also get radial symmetry out of that also with the kaleidoscope and what you're talking about. But tessellations, I know, are a very fun activity for students to learn about, especially with patterns.
Yeah, definitely. And it really starts with simple shapes. For example, in our previous slide, you see just squares and just a couple of triangles. And then with that, you begin to add, and your pattern will get, it can be simple or it can get very complex and create those illusions that John mentioned. So patterns in art. Want to describe this?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go back there.
And so we wanted to share this one because, like the tessellation activity that kids often go to, they end up kind of creating something familiar with the shapes they're cutting. And it's often using a square and cutting a piece out of the square and then taping it on the opposite end of the square to like kind of create like this little cube that you can really make a grid and pattern with. And like we do have a lesson on our YouTube that's really similar to this. So like there's definitely lessons available online to like explore more tessellation and pattern projects.
Definitely.
Right, and that is something pretty simple that a student can do,
Yes.
just a little piece of cardstock or something like that.
Exactly.
Draw a design of anything, cut it out like you said, and then just slide it to the top, the opposite side or whatever, tape it, and then just keep tracing it.
Yeah, definitely. Alrighty, so now we're going to be highlighting one work from our permanent collection that uses tessellations in a similar way. So this is the piece, Metepec. It's a painting, oil on canvas, painted in 1995 by the artist named Alfredo Arreguin. So a little bit about Arreguin. He was born in 1935 in a small town named Morelia in Mexico. So he's a Mexican artist. And growing up, his grandfather actually really inspired him to become an artist. So his grandfather would provide him colored pencils and paints for him to start drawing. But then as a teenager, Arreguin moved to Seattle, where he has lived since the 1950s. So it was really there that he started to make artwork that incorporated his Mexican roots, so which are really based on pre-Aztec culture and spiritualism, as well as his life in the Northwest, which if you ever have been to the Northwest, it's very lush, it's very green. So he uses these two influences to create work that kind of feels like it's hovering between real world and fantasy. It's very mystical, and with this example, he uses tiny masks as part of his tessellation. So we can go to the next slide and see that in detail. So as you can see, there are hundreds of tiny, tiny masks here, like a tessellation. They fit all next to each other. He uses a diamond shape, and each one is so different. Even though his works are quite large, this one measures 4 feet by 4 feet, he uses a very tiny brush to create these works. So, of course, he'll start with one, and then as he begins to group them together, and thus creating a tessellation. So this particular painting has between 300 and 350 masks, because there are other details that kind of look like otherworldly creatures. So it looks like he's pulling elements from this fantasy land, something that he creates, from his mind, but that is still very influenced by his upbringing and his life in the Northwest. So as we can see here, just as an example, this mask here, this mask alone, it's got some green, it's got some purple, it also has got some tan and black to give this mask its features. So again, this is inspired by his Mexican roots and where he lives now in Seattle. So if you do look up more of his work, a lot of it is similar in the way that it plays with patterns, but they are each so vibrant and mesmerizing. So again, the artist is Alfredo Arreguin. So if you are interested in seeing more of his work, definitely you can Google him or visit his website, and his paintings are really, really beautiful.
There you go, and certainly is impressive, which is why I wanted to go back again, and that way they can see the student or the artist's name up there. And once again, both of you, thank you for coming in again and showing us how patterns in art and math work together right there. Nicely done.
So much.
That is today's museum moment. We'll be back with Matthew right after this.